So you want to own a home security system. You picture the moment perfectly. A little decal on the front window, a keypad glowing by the door, an app on your phone that lets you check in on your house from a conference room 3 states away. You picture the peace of mind, the specific, expensive kind of peace of mind that lets you fall asleep without running through a mental checklist of every lock in the house. That's the version people imagine. Freedom from worry, control over your own space, a small monthly insurance policy against the worst night of your life. For most homeowners, that feeling alone is worth paying for. Insurance companies seem to agree. Many offer premium discounts of 5 to 20% just for having a monitored system installed. It feels like a rare win. Pay a little, save a little, sleep better. What's not to like? But here's what nobody tells you when you're standing in a big box store comparing camera kits. A home security system is not a product. It's a subscription with a hardware deposit, and the price on the box is almost never the price you actually pay. The economics look very different once you follow the money past the first purchase, past the sign-up special, past the free camera, past the friendly salesperson who never mentions what happens in year 3. The reality is far more complicated and far more interesting than buy a box, feel safer. To understand what you're really buying, we have to start where everyone starts, the price tag. At the entry level, a basic DIY security kit, a hub, a couple of door sensors, one camera, runs somewhere around $200 to $230. That's the number people screenshot and show their spouse. Cheap, reasonable, a weekend project. Mid-tier systems, the kind with several cameras, motion sensors, smart locks, and a video doorbell, land in the $600 to $900 range for equipment alone. And premium, fully integrated smart home security setups, the ones that talk to your thermostat, your garage door, and your lighting, can run anywhere from $1,500 up to $3,000 or more before a single month of service begins. Here's the part that trips people up. Professional installation isn't free just because a salesperson says it is. Companies that offer free installation are almost always recovering that cost somewhere else, usually folded into a multi-year monitoring contract you didn't fully read. Paid installation, when it's billed honestly, typically runs $99 to $250. Some full custom jobs with wired cameras and in-wall work push past $800. Then there's the one-time activation fee, often $79 to $99, that most companies quietly waive if you agree to a monitoring plan. Notice the structure here. Almost every discount in this industry exists specifically to get you into a recurring payment. That's not an accident. That's the business model, and we'll come back to it. So the $200 system quietly becomes a $200 to $900 upfront cost, plus installation, plus activation. But that isn't the expense that surprises most owners. The number nobody puts on the sign in the store window is the monthly monitoring fee. Professional 24/7 monitoring, the service that actually calls the police when your alarm goes off, typically costs between $25 and $60 a month, with some premium plans reaching $80. That doesn't sound catastrophic on its own, but multiply it out. At $40 a month, you are paying $480 a year, every year, for as long as you own the system. Here's the number that should genuinely surprise you. Over a standard 5-year monitoring contract, which is common with several major providers, that $40 a month plan adds up to $2,400. On a system whose equipment originally cost $600, the monitoring fee alone will cost you 4 times more than the hardware ever did. This is the quiet trick of the entire security industry. The equipment is priced to look affordable because the equipment isn't where the profit lives. The profit lives in the recurring monthly charge you agree to, almost as an afterthought, buried in paperwork you sign standing in your own hallway while the installer waits. And that's before you even get to the contract itself. Many providers lock customers in for 3 to 5 years, with early termination fees that can run into hundreds of dollars if you try to leave, move, or switch providers. Let's build the real number, not the number on the box, the number over the life of ownership. Take a realistic mid-tier system, $700 in equipment, $150 professional installation, and a $40 a month monitoring plan on a 5-year contract. Purchase cost, $700, installation, $150, monitoring for 5 years, 40 times 60 months equals $2,400, battery and sensor replacements over 5 years, roughly $150, software or app subscription add-ons, cloud video storage, smart features, often $10 per month equals $600 over 5 years, equipment upgrades as sensors fail or go obsolete, budget another $200, Add it up. 700 plus 150 plus 2400 plus 150 plus 600 plus 200 equals $4,200 over 5 years. That's $70 a month, every month for 5 straight years, for a system that was marketed to you as a $700 purchase. And we haven't even touched depreciation. Security hardware ages fast, wireless protocols change, camera resolution standards move on, battery-powered sensors degrade, and after 5 to 7 years, most systems are functionally obsolete, even if they still technically work, meaning the resale value of used security equipment is close to zero. You're not building an asset, you're renting protection and slowly writing off a pile of plastic and circuit boards to zero. The real ownership cost is far higher than the sticker price ever suggested. But to understand why the industry is built this way, we need to follow the money to where it actually goes. Home security is, at its core, a recurring revenue business wearing a hardware costume. Here's the honest version of the business model. Companies sell or even give away the equipment near cost, sometimes at a loss, because the equipment isn't the product. The monitoring contract is the product. This is the same logic as a razor and blades business, except the razor is a $700 camera kit and the blades are 60 consecutive monthly payments. Think about the margin structure. A monitoring center employee can realistically watch and respond to alarms for thousands of customers simultaneously, because the vast majority of systems never trigger a real alarm in a given month. The monitoring company's actual operating cost per customer per month is a small fraction of the $30 to $60 they collect. That gap, the difference between what monitoring costs to deliver and what it's sold for, is where the real profit sits. This explains a pattern you've probably noticed if you've ever shopped for a system: heavy discounts and free equipment for new signups, combined with long contract lock-ins and painful cancellation fees. The company is willing to lose money on the hardware because the contract is where they make it back, many times over, as long as you don't cancel. Which raises the obvious question: what actually determines whether this business and your personal decision to own the system pays off? For a home security system, everything comes down to one number: the retention rate. How long a customer keeps paying before they cancel. From the company side, a customer who cancels after 8 months is a loss. The discounted or free equipment they installed cost more than the handful of monitoring payments collected before cancellation. A customer who stays 5 years is enormously profitable because nearly everything after the break-even point, often somewhere around 18 to 24 months, is close to pure margin. From your side as the owner, the same number determines whether the system was ever worth it. If you install a system, get busy, forget to renew a battery, ignore false alarms until you mute the app notifications, and effectively stop using it after year 1, you didn't buy security. You bought an 18-month experiment in vigilance that quietly turned into a $40 a month bill for a system doing nothing. This is why the entire industry is engineered around keeping you subscribed rather than around the split second an actual break-in happens. Slick apps, smart home integrations, engagement push notifications, these features exist as much to keep the account active as to keep the house safe. The alarm going off is a rare event. The monthly charge is not. Everything else in this business, marketing spend, installation discounts, contract length, is downstream of that one number: how long you stay. On paper, owning a security system looks like the simplest purchase in the world. Install it, arm it, done. In practice, it quietly demands an ongoing stream of small management tasks most people never budget for. Someone has to change batteries in a dozen sensors on a rotating schedule. Someone has to reconnect the system to a new Wi-Fi router every time the internet provider changes equipment. Someone has to deal with false alarms, and false alarms are extremely common, frequent enough that many cities now fine homeowners for repeated false alarm police dispatches, sometimes $50 to $100 per incident after the first 1 or 2 free false alarms in a year. Someone has to renegotiate or renew the contract before it silently auto-renews at a higher rate. This is where behavioral economics quietly takes over. The sunk cost fallacy keeps people paying for underused systems. I already spent $700 on the equipment, I can't cancel now, even when the monthly fee has stopped being worth it. Loss aversion makes canceling feel riskier than it is, because the fear of the one bad night you're unprotected looms larger in the mind than 60 small, steady payments. And the endowment effect makes owners overvalue equipment sitting in their own walls, resisting an upgrade or a switch to a cheaper provider simply because the current system is already theirs. None of this makes security systems a bad idea. It makes them a much more active commitment than the sales pitch implies. But even a homeowner who manages every one of these tasks perfectly still can't control the biggest risk sitting outside their own house. Apply the weather test. What happens to this purchase during a bad year? During a recession, discretionary spending on non-essential subscriptions is usually the first thing cut, and a $40 a month monitoring fee, however comforting, competes directly against groceries and rent in a squeezed household budget. Cancellation rates for subscription security services tend to climb whenever consumer belt-tightening hits. Inflation hits differently. Monitoring contracts routinely include built-in annual price increases, sometimes buried in the fine print as a percentage tied to a cost of living adjustment. A $35 a month plan signed in year 1 can quietly become a $45 a month plan by year 4, with the increase arriving as a single line in a mailed notice most people never read closely. Interest rates matter too in a less obvious way. Many premium systems are effectively financed, with the equipment costs spread across the monitoring contract. When rates rise, so does the implicit cost of that financing, even if it's never labeled as a loan. Then there's technology risk. Cellular-based alarm systems have had to force mass equipment upgrades in the past as carriers shut down old network standards, leaving customers with security systems that simply stopped communicating with the monitoring center until they paid for new hardware. And regulation is a live variable too. Cities increasingly fine homes for repeated false alarms or unpermitted alarm systems, adding a cost that didn't exist when the contract was first signed. None of these risks show up in the sales brochure. All of them show up, eventually, in the total cost of ownership. Ask most Americans to name a home security company, and one brand dominates the answer. The company whose trucks and yard signs have become the default symbol of home protection in the United States for generations, expanding through decades of acquisitions into the household name it is today. It's a genuine business success story. Massive scale, national brand recognition, a business model that turned a modest piece of hardware into one of the most recognizable subscription services in American homes. But that story is the visible tip of a much larger picture. For every household name security company, there have been dozens of regional and local security firms that didn't survive, squeezed by the same thin equipment margins, the same customer acquisition costs, and the same churn problem that makes this business brutally difficult to run profitably at smaller scale. The company you know isn't representative of the industry. It's the survivor. The same bias applies at the household level. You've probably heard the story of a neighbor whose system caught a break-in on camera or stopped a burglary in progress, the dramatic exception that gets repeated at every dinner party. What you don't hear about nearly as often are the far more common outcomes, the system that sat quietly for 6 years and was never tested, or the one that got canceled after 11 months because nobody could remember the alarm code. Those stories don't get told because they're not stories, they're just spreadsheets. You are looking at the exception. The typical outcome is much quieter, much less cinematic, and much more expensive per month than the highlight reel suggests. Zoom out, and a home security system stops looking like a purchase about cameras and sensors and starts looking like a case study in a much older economic pattern, the low upfront cost that exists specifically to unlock a much larger recurring one. It's the same logic behind the free hardware and the metered ink cartridge, the discounted gym membership and the annual renewal, the free installation and the 5-year contract. In each case, the visible price is designed to feel small enough to say yes to quickly, and the real cost only reveals itself slowly, one monthly statement at a time, long after the decision has already been made. The biggest cost was never the security system itself. It was everything ownership quietly demanded afterward. The battery replacements, the contract renewals, the rising fees, the false alarm fines, the years of paying for a service you may or may not have kept actively using. We don't just buy products. We buy systems. We buy obligations. We buy trade-offs. And understanding those trade-offs, not the price on the box, but the total compounding cost of the decision, is often worth more than the security system itself. If this changed how you look at something sitting in your own home right now, that's exactly what this channel is for. Every video here takes a purchase you thought you already understood and shows you the real economics underneath it, the numbers nobody puts on the box. If you want to see the hidden cost of ownership broken down for something else, a car, a boat, a gym membership, a rental property, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. And if there's a specific product or purchase you want examined this way, drop it in the comments. The next episode might be your idea. One more thing before you go. Hit like if this video paid for itself in one insight, because that's the only return on investment we're chasing here.